Hello, good crowd. I am so excited this week. We're here recording episodes at Rotary International headquarters talking about World Polio Day and some of the other Rotary issues that Rotarians are doing around the world. But our first interview that we're recording today is with Carol Pandak. She's the director of PolioPlus for Rotary International. She has been doing this for nearly 20 years. Stick around. You don't want to miss this episode.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
Our sponsor, Johnson & Johnson, matches most individual donations up to $250 at caringcrowd.org. Carol, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're thrilled to have you.
Good to be here.
Yes, don't be nervous. We're just going to chit-chat here. You've got some big news, though. And so let's start with the big news.
Okay.
Wild poliovirus type 3 has been eradicated. What does that mean?
Well, we are anticipating on World Polio Day, October 24th, that the Global Certification Commission will certify the eradication of type 3 polio. Major milestone in the program. There are 3 types of polio, type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 2 was certified eradicated in 2015. So this is the second of the 3 types to be eradicated, and it shows that we are continuing to make progress in our effort to eradicate polio now that 2 out of the 3 types seems will have been certified eradicated.
So what does that mean in terms of kids being paralyzed and kids being vaccinated?
Well, this means that only one type of the poliovirus continues to circulate in the world, type 1. Type 1 is the most virulent, or the one that can cause the most paralysis. But again, it's an important marker on our progress to eradicate polio. But that's not the only positive news we have. We have other positive news. Nigeria has gone more than 3 years without detecting a wild poliovirus in the country. And that sort of opens the doorway for the entire African region to be potentially certified polio-free in mid-2020, after all the data is analyzed. Yeah. So we have kind of 2 major milestones happening, which I think is, it provides motivation and inspires us to continue with the work that we're doing.
Yeah, you've been at this for a while. You took this job in 2000, 19 years ago. Am I remembering right?
Yes, you are. Yes.
I mean, that's amazing. Having a job like that long, that's not a job, that's a calling. Why is this so important to you?
Well, I think a couple of things, but I mean, first and foremost, you have the opportunity to protect children from a devastating disease from which there's no recovery, really. Once you're paralyzed with polio, it's likely irreversible. So, and as I've traveled the world and I see how children are impacted or families are impacted in countries with very few resources to help them, if they do get polio, just being able to be part of something like that is, as you say, it becomes a bit of a vocation, right? It's not a job anymore.
Yeah. So how did it come about that you got the job in the first place?
Well, I've come up through Global Health, actually through the American Academy of Pediatrics. That was really national health. But I worked there on a program to increase access to health care for disadvantaged children in the United States. Working with amazing pediatricians out in the field. We were in slum areas, we were in remote areas in Alaska, but really developed my passion for working for children. And so I got recruited to Rotary after several years at the American Academy of Pediatrics to lead the polio program here.
Wow. Well, are you glad you came?
This work has provided the opportunity for many things. One, to see quite a bit of the world, which is very interesting, very educational. To work with some amazing Rotary members around the world who are, we call this a vocation. For me, it is a super triple vocation, right? For those that have been in it longer than I have been, right? Who first had the idea. And there are some Rotarians around who did introduce the idea to Rotary. And then our partner organizations, the World Health Organization, UNICEF, CDC, World Health, and the Gates Foundation. Amazing colleagues doing amazing work in the field.
As you think about the implications of eradicating the type 2 and type 3 virus of polio, does that give the world, does that give you and your work an opportunity to switch to a monovalent immunization strategy? And what does that mean if it does?
Yeah, at the moment, the recommendation is to stay the course with the current vaccine that we're using, the bivalent vaccine. We're learning a lot of lessons from our switch from the trivalent.
That was more problematic than you thought it would be, wasn't
it? So, given what seems to be a short time horizon for finishing the job of polio eradication, the recommendation right now is to stay the course with the bivalent type 1 and 3.
So for a little bit of context for our discussion, when we switched from a trivalent to a bivalent, we expected, tragically, that there could be some circulating vaccine-derived cases of type 2 polio.
That's right.
And there were actually quite a few over the last couple of years since the switch. Are we getting our hands around that now? Are we putting those fires out?
Yeah, so I think it's important to put into context, the switch was done because children were being, the type 2 component of the trivalent vaccine was causing paralysis in children. You had an eradicated virus, so the best thinking at that time was the switch would be appropriate, and that perhaps routine immunization levels would be high enough to protect children. Well, it's not high enough to protect children, so we do have these cases of circulating vaccine-derived poliovirus. This may not be intuitive, but you'd use the monovalent type 2 vaccine to actually address these outbreaks because you're trying to protect against type 2.
Right.
But there is a new vaccine sort of on the horizon. Novel oral polio vaccine, which is much more stable than the current monovalent.
Yeah, the Gates Foundation has been instrumental in developing that, right?
Yeah, instrumental in developing, funding, pushing it through as quickly as possible. There could be up to 100 million doses available in June of 2020 or mid-2020. Clinical trials are still, phase 2 are still going on.
But trying to figure out if it's as effective as just in terms of immunity.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So there is positive news on the horizon, and we're hopeful that it will help us in with these vaccine-derived.
The key thing about that new vaccine is that it can't mutate and allow for anyone ever to get polio from the vaccine, which it would be a big change. Even though it's just a few cases, relatively speaking, it's a big change to go from a few to 0, right? Exactly,
and this is, again, the lessons that we're learning with type 2 will be applicable for type 1 and 3 as well. And so there's also development of novel type 1 and type 3. So any circulating vaccine-derived virus would have a vaccine to prevent that.
Yeah. We're going to be talking to a lot of people about polio this week, but you're the bona fide expert, so I have to ask you the hard questions.
Yeah.
And probably the hardest question that we're dealing with right now on the polio front is that the number of cases we'll expect to see by the end of the year is probably 3 times the number we had last year. We had 32 or 33 last year, right?
33, yeah.
And 22 the year before, so that the trend line is suddenly backwards. How do you think about that, and what's the message you would give to everyone in the world that wants to see this happen and is maybe feeling a little discouraged?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say don't be discouraged. The program has faced challenges before, and we've figured out a way to overcome them before. So I think that while it is true we have more cases this year, statistically it may not be super significant, right? But the numbers go up, and people, their morale goes a little bit down, right? But I do think in the face of those challenges, we have this progress with type 3 being certified. We've got our African story, possibly our African story. And I'd say in Pakistan, there's been a little bit of I'd say a blip. The program became highly politicized. There were some false rumors about the safety of the vaccine that happened up in one of the provinces that spread like wildfire, and it turned out to be fake news, actually. Fake news.
Actual fake news.
Actual fake news in a different country.
Yeah.
So I think the program is really, and the leadership in Pakistan is working very hard to deal with that issue. I think there's a lot of energy around Pakistan. Afghanistan, we had a different problem. The Taliban had a ban on vaccination. So for April to October 2019, children were not being immunized. Now that ban has been temporarily and partially lifted. Maybe not temporary, I'll say partially lifted. So we can't go house to house, the gold standard, to find every child. We're going site to site or clinic to clinic. But at least it's an opening to start getting more children immunized. Now the point is, can we get enough immunized so that we can prevent,
create the herd immunity,
exactly,
we call it, right?
So that there won't be a big outbreak, right, in our future. But still, it's amazing. 18 million people walking alive who otherwise would have been paralyzed or even died because of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. You have to look at it sort of in a balanced way.
Yeah.
And the world is focused on Pakistan and Afghanistan.
So this year, you and your colleagues at the GPEI updated the endgame strategy. And some of the new elements of that were to re-engage the local communities and to integrate more health services into the polio, to essentially making the plus bigger in the polio effort, right? How's that going, and what are we seeing done as part of that implementation?
Well, a couple of things. I'll first mention Rotary has been doing some of this plus work in many countries for many years, but in Pakistan and Nigeria in particular, but let's focus on Pakistan. We've inaugurated, dozens of water filtration plants in the highest risk communities. We're doing health camps that provide more services than just polio vaccine. So I think that that effort is going well. UNICEF is working on a plan especially in Afghanistan and the Kandahar area to strengthen routine immunization. Also working with Gavi for multi-antigen activities so that you're, to sort of, do polio, but sort of take the focus off polio because communities want other things. And this focus on polio is getting a little frustrating for them because they have other other healthcare
well,
needs.
especially because polio efforts work, and most
successful.
communities don't see any polio, so they do see kids with measles and other treatable, preventable diseases, right?
So I think that effort is underway, and I do think that working more closely with Gavi, the Global Vaccine Alliance, whose focus is on immunization system strengthening, can help us in those areas to improve routine immunization that will help us also in the long term to secure a polio-free world once the world is certified eradicated.
As you look back over your nearly 20 years fighting polio, what are you most proud of having accomplished?
I think the fact that we've reduced the number of places and the number of places where polio continues to circulate. If you think about it, it's not all over Pakistan and Afghanistan. It's in limited areas. So that the rest of the world is polio free, right? And when you think of that, 19 years doesn't seem that long, right? I mean, it's been a partnership, right? But it's, we've all been a part of something that 19 years isn't really that long when you think of world history. I think that a program has accomplished a lot in those 19 years. And I think that we can be proud of that. We've protected, as I said, 18 million people from contracting polio. And that's a big figure.
That is a big number. A lot of people owe you lunch.
Mostly children who are grown now.
Yeah, they don't know it, though. That's the problem.
Exactly.
You would never have to buy lunch again. Carol, what's your superpower?
I think my superpower is the ability to remain optimistic, right? And it's because of the lessons we've learned in the program over the time that I've been in the program. Is that we faced challenges before, we have overcome the challenges, and the partnership is strong, and we are looking to adapt our strategies, working with countries. That I feel, while you have sometimes a blip allows for a little bit of a shakeup, and to get you rethinking, re-strategizing, right, on how to put this whole thing together. So I'd say it's optimism, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Carol, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Before you go, would you take just a minute and tell people how they can learn more about and perhaps donate to the effort to eradicate polio?
Well, you can learn more about Rotary's effort to eradicate polio and polio eradication at endpolio.org. You can also visit endpolio.org to learn how to watch the online global update on World Polio Day to learn more about the status of polio eradication and some of the heroes in polio eradication, some Rotarian heroes in particular. And you, of course, can donate by going to endpolio.org.
Fantastic. Well, Carol, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We wish you every success in the great work you're doing.
Thanks so much, Devin.
All righty. Let's do some good.
Let's do it.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
Thanks for tuning in to the Your Mark on the World show, the Social Impact Podcast. Please subscribe via YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify.